Welcome back, everyone, to Classic Nostalgia Shows, the podcast where we just absolutely love diving deep into the timeless movies, television, and incredible stories that really shaped Hollywood's golden age. If you're like us, a big fan of those classic films, vintage TV, the old westerns, the forgotten war movies, and of course, the iconic stars who brought them all to life, then you are definitely in the right place today.
Absolutely, John. And today we're actually taking a bit of a different journey, aren't we? We often think of Hollywood's golden age, and our minds immediately jump to those dazzling premieres, the elegant movie stars, the magnificent theaters, and those unforgettable films like Casablanca, Gone with the Wind, The Wizard of Oz. They're just etched into our memories.
They absolutely are, and for good reason, they're masterpieces. But what we're going to explore today is that behind those bright lights, there was another Hollywood. A Hollywood that was really controlled by some incredibly powerful studio executives. A place where an actor, no matter how famous, could lose their career overnight. A world where personal lives were not just carefully managed, but sometimes completely manufactured. And that's what we're calling the dark side of early Hollywood studios.
It's a fascinating topic, and it's important to say up front, this isn't about tearing down the classics we all adore, not at all. It's really about understanding the incredible context in which those wonderful films were made, and honestly, the immense sacrifices many actors and filmmakers made behind the scenes to bring that magic to the screen.
Exactly. It gives you a whole new appreciation, really. So grab your favorite beverage, settle in, and let's travel back to the fascinating and sometimes, yes, troubling world of early Hollywood. To truly understand this darker side, Annie, we first have to grasp the sheer power and structure of what was known as the studio system.
Oh, the studio system. It wasn't just a collection of filmmakers back then, was it? We're talking about the period roughly between the 1920s and the late 1940s, where Hollywood operated almost like a collection of separate kingdoms, with 5 major studios dominating everything: MGM, Warner Bros., Paramount, 20th Century Fox, and RKO.
And when we say dominated everything, we mean everything. They owned the production facilities, the backlots, the sound stages. They had directors, writers, and crucially, all their actors under long-term contracts. It wasn't uncommon for these contracts to be for 7 years, sometimes even longer.
7 years. Imagine that. Today, an actor might sign on for a single film or a multi-picture deal, but it's usually project-specific. Back then, you were essentially property of the studio. They were investments, yes, but very much treated like company assets. And some of them even owned the movie theaters where their films were shown, which is just wild when you think about it.
It's vertical integration taken to the extreme. And this brings us to what I find one of the most astonishing aspects of the dark side: how much these studios owned their stars. Annie, imagine signing a work contract where your employer could decide your name, how your hair looked, who you dated, what you wore, what interviews you gave, even whether you gained or lost weight.
It sounds like a dystopian novel, not a film contract. But that was everyday life for so many Hollywood stars. Their entire identities, truly, were crafted by the studio publicity departments. Birthplaces were changed, ages were adjusted, family histories were rewritten. Sometimes accents just vanished overnight because the studio decided it was better for their image.
The goal wasn't authenticity at all. It was purely about creating a marketable image. Audiences weren't just buying movie tickets, they were buying an illusion, a dream. And the studios were the dream weavers, whether the dream was true to the star or not.
And the publicity machine was incredibly sophisticated. If an actor had a scandal, which, let's face it, happens, it often never reached the newspapers. Studios had incredibly close relationships with influential gossip columnists. Stories could quietly disappear, or conversely, others could suddenly appear to boost a star's profile or divert attention.
Exactly. Romances were sometimes encouraged purely for publicity. Engagements occasionally generated headlines that conveniently benefited upcoming films. Some relationships, of course, were genuine, but many were carefully orchestrated. The public saw fairy tales. Behind the scenes, the reality could be far, far more complicated.
It makes you wonder, doesn't it, about some of those iconic Hollywood couples. How much was real love and how much was a savvy publicist? On top of all this personal control, let's not forget the sheer amount of work. Making movies during the Golden Age wasn't glamorous for everyone, especially not the contract players.
Oh, absolutely not. We're talking about working 6 days a week, routinely. Production often began before sunrise, and large productions could last months. Retakes would continue until the directors were absolutely satisfied, no matter how many hours it took. And contract players couldn't just refuse assignments. If the studio wanted an actor in another film immediately after finishing one production, that actor usually had little to no choice.
The pace must have been absolutely exhausting. Yet despite those relentless demands, it's incredible to think that such remarkable, enduring films continued to emerge year after year. It speaks to the talent but also the sheer endurance of these individuals.
It really does. And speaking of endurance, another significant frustration for actors of that era was typecasting. If audiences loved someone as a cowboy, guess what? The studio kept casting them in westerns. If someone succeeded in romantic comedies, comedy became their future. It was a golden cage for many.
Right, the studios believed consistency reduced financial risk. If it worked once, why mess with it? Unfortunately, it often severely limited artistic growth. Many truly talented performers dreamed of dramatic roles they were never allowed to play, stuck in a genre or character type they'd mastered but yearned to escape.
Some eventually broke free, which is always inspiring to read about. But honestly, many never did. Their entire careers were defined by one facet of their talent. But not every performer just accepted studio control without a fight. We saw several major stars push back and challenge the system.
Oh, those were the brave ones. Some refused unwanted roles knowing the consequences. Others demanded better contracts, pushing for more control over their careers or better compensation. A few even risked suspension, which sounds like a vacation, but it really wasn't.
No, not at all. Being suspended didn't mean staying home and relaxing. It often meant losing pay while the studio extended the contract, essentially making the punishment even longer. It took enormous courage to stand against executives who controlled nearly every opportunity in Hollywood at the time.
And over time, these individual challenges, these acts of defiance, slowly but surely chipped away at the studio system's absolute power. But perhaps one of Hollywood's truly darkest chapters, and arguably the most controversial, arrived after World War II. The blacklist.
The blacklist. It's a somber period. Political tensions were incredibly high throughout America, and investigations into alleged communist influence reached deep into the entertainment industry. Actors, screenwriters, directors, producers, many found themselves questioned by committees like HUAC, the House Un-American Activities Committee.
And it was a no-win situation for so many. Some refused to testify, invoking their Fifth Amendment rights, and were immediately branded as uncooperative. Others cooperated, naming names, which then ruined other people's careers and lives. Careers disappeared almost overnight. Writers worked under fake names if they could find work at all. Some just left Hollywood entirely.
It was a chilling time. Regardless of one's actual political views, the fear and the suspicion affected countless creative people. It truly remains one of the most controversial and tragic periods in American entertainment history. And speaking of danger, Annie, filmmaking itself was often a much riskier business back then.
Oh, absolutely. Modern film sets have stringent safety protocols, but early Hollywood often did not. Stunt performers accepted enormous risks, protective equipment was limited, and action scenes sometimes involved genuine danger. Animals on set created unpredictable situations. Large explosions used practical effects that were often less controlled than today's, and special effects technology simply wasn't what it is now.
So many of those unforgettable scenes came at tremendous personal risk to the actors and stunt people involved. It's truly amazing what they put themselves through for the sake of the shot. And then there's the pressure of fame itself. Audiences saw the glamorous premieres, the expensive gowns, the luxury automobiles, the beautiful homes.
But what they rarely saw was the immense pressure that came with it. The constant publicity, the relentless long working hours, the gnawing fear of losing popularity, of being forgotten. Some stars struggled privately with anxiety, loneliness, or even financial uncertainty, despite appearing enormously successful on the surface.
Fame might solve some problems, but it definitely created many, many others. It's a heavy burden. But eventually, the studio system, in its original form, had to come to an end, right?
It did. By the late 1940s and 1950s, major changes were arriving. Television, for one, became hugely popular, drawing audiences away from theaters. Then, crucial court decisions, like the Paramount Decree, forced studios to separate from their theater ownership, breaking that vertical monopoly. Independent producers also started gaining more influence.
And thank goodness, those ironclad long-term contracts gradually disappeared. Actors finally gained more freedom over their careers and choices, and directors gained greater creative control. Hollywood slowly but surely transformed into the industry we recognize today.
Which brings us to a really important point. Knowing all these stories, understanding the dark side, it really doesn't diminish the films themselves. If anything, I think it actually increases our appreciation for them.
I completely agree, Annie. The performances remain extraordinary, the cinematography is often breathtakingly beautiful, and the storytelling remains absolutely timeless. Movies like Casablanca, The Searchers, Rear Window, High Noon, Roman Holiday, they continue to inspire new generations of filmmakers and captivate audiences.
Because behind every single classic film were truly talented people working under extraordinary, often challenging circumstances. Many endured incredibly difficult conditions to create the entertainment that still captivates us decades later. It gives them a whole new layer of heroism in a way.
It truly does. Hollywood's golden age was in essence filled with contradictions. It produced some of the greatest films ever made, launched legendary careers, and created unforgettable characters. Yet it also revealed the dangers of concentrating enormous power in the hands of just a few studio executives.
The history of classic cinema isn't simply a story of glamour and red carpets. It's also a story of incredible resilience, of artists striving to create something meaningful, of actors overcoming impossible expectations, and of writers and directors finding ways to tell unforgettable stories despite enormous limitations and pressures.
And perhaps that's one of the main reasons these movies continue to matter so much to us, even today. They weren't created by perfect systems or in perfect conditions. They were created by incredibly talented people who persevered through imperfect ones, and that perseverance shines through every frame.
So, the next time you watch one of your favorite classics, take a moment to remember that behind every memorable scene stood hundreds of hardworking artists whose dedication, often against great odds, helped shape the very history of cinema. Their work continues to entertain us decades later, and for that we really are incredibly grateful.
Absolutely. And if you enjoyed today's journey into classic Hollywood history, don't forget to subscribe to Classic Nostalgia Shows for more stories about vintage television, classic westerns, forgotten war films, old Hollywood legends, and of course, the movies that continue to stand the test of time.
That's right. Until next time, keep celebrating the golden age of entertainment, and we'll see you at the movies.